Hi everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk, Lies, Damn Lies and Customers, How to Become Anti-Fragile in Product Management. If we haven't met before, hi, I'm Alex. I'm a product manager by day, and I don't want to sound by night because that makes me sound like Batman, and I'm not Batman. On the side, I'm also a trainer with ProKanban.org, a flight levels coach. I've been involved in product, agile, lean, change for about 15 years or so. These days, I'm much more on the flow Kanban side of things, just so you know where my allegiances lie. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that's probably the place I'm most active, but I'm also on email. But if you connect with me, I'd love to meet you. A bit of a shameless plug. We have a new course from ProKanban.org, which has just come out that we're calling Accelerating Product Value. If you grab one of these leaflets from ProKanban.org, from the table upstairs, we'll give you 20% off our first in-person course that I'm teaching with Colleen Johnson next month, who's the CEO of ProKanban. But the reason for mentioning this is not just a plug. Some of the concepts that I'm going to talk about here and land, but I may not unpack fully, we cover in that course. So this is a bit of a teaser, a bit of a warm-up for that. But where am I going in this talk? I'm going to talk about what anti-fragile is. I'm going to talk about why we can't trust what customers tell us. I'm going to talk just a little bit about flow metrics. And then I'm going to bring it all together and talk about how to become anti-fragile in product management. If you don't know what anti-fragility is, don't worry. In about 5 minutes, you will. And I'm sincerely hoping in about 25 minutes, you'll not only agree with me, you'll be thinking up your own strategies to become anti-fragile. Before we jump in, just imagine you're a product manager. And you work in a company with a product that is the market leader in its category, and you have probably around 50% market share at this point. You've got a competitor that is resurgent, that is gaining ground, but is still quite far behind. You've developed a product for your next generation version, and you're testing it extensively now before announcing plans for a full-scale production. The prototype results the test results are in. The report is clear, the data is trustworthy. 75% of customers are telling you they love the new product. About 15% are indifferent, and about 10% are saying they prefer the old product. But you know what, you're a diligent product manager, and you have a diligent team, and you thought, you know what, we can't wait for all that customer testing. It's just going to take too long. We're going to go out with our product, and we're going to test it in the field locally. So we're going to give some samples to real customers, we're going to find some locally, and we're going to do just a quick poll. They try the product, you ask them a series of questions, but when you ask the question, should we ship this product? As the last question, 100% of customers say yes. Emphatically, yes, ship it. So my question to all of you is, as an empowered product manager on an empowered product team, assuming that you have the authority, the delegated authority to make the decision, what do you do? And can I ask you just to grab one of the cards, maybe next to you? All being well, you won't need the red one. TVC. Just right in the back. That way, if you do want to use the red one, you can do. What would you do? So I've had one answer here. So you could do anything from ship it to get more data to shelve it to wait to. You've got a choice. But the data is clear. What would you do? We'll come back to that in a minute. Let me introduce a few concepts to you. What is anti-fragile? Well, you probably know what fragile means, and you probably know what robust means, but fragile is when something breaks or deteriorates under stress. Robust means something is resilient and probably remains the same under stress. But there is another category, and it's pretty much the opposite of fragile, and that's anti-fragile. And that's when something improves due to the application of stress. I didn't coin this. This came from this book called AntiFragile. I would highly recommend it. The author wrote a book called The Black Swan, which I'm guessing some of you may have heard about. This book came later, but he acknowledges that this book is pretty much the foundation for a lot of his thinking. But I would highly recommend this book. But anti-fragile is when something improves due to the application of stress. And in our context, one of the greatest sources of stress in our systems is that our customers lie to us. Our customers lie to us. Let me tell you about this. I don't know what you think about Facebook or the parent company Meta. We don't need to go into that. But hopefully we can all agree that Facebook, as a product, they are masters at product management. And I want you to think not about Facebook in 2024. Go back in time about 18 or so years to 2006. Facebook went through a major change. So you might remember it started life as a networking tool for students starting in Harvard and then going out wider. They introduced a major new feature in 2006 called Newsfeed. You're probably looking at this thinking, I recognize it. It was a major change for Facebook, and obviously the product has moved on a ton in 20 years, but it's still pretty much what we have now. So this came in September 2006, and the customer feedback was pretty clear. They hated it. I mean, noisily, audibly so in some cases. Very quickly, nearly 750,000 users joined a new Facebook group called Students Against Facebook Newsfeed. I picked this verbatim because I really liked it. Somebody says, I'm really creeped out by the new Facebook. It makes me feel like a stalker. It's amazing how behaviors normalize quickly, right? But just imagine you're a product manager. What do you do with this torrent of negative feedback? You've got a few choices, right? You roll back, apologize. We're going to PR mode. What do you think Zuckerberg did? You could probably guess if you use Facebook. He actually posted on his newsfeed. You don't need to read this. He acknowledges the feedback. He says, calm down, dear. It will be okay. We love the new product, and we think you're going to love it too. So on one hand, you've got all this negative feedback. Customers are saying one thing, and seemingly the product manager is ignoring them. What's going on? Let me give you a few data points. In August 2006, monthly Facebook page views was at 10 billion. 10 billion. The newsfeed was introduced in September 2006. Fast forward another month. Any idea what page views were in October 2006? Now remember, old Facebook, 10 billion. Newsfeed introduced, customers hate it. What happens a month later? Go on, give me a go on, I love it. It goes up, we've got a GOTS up.
20 billion.
Close, 22 billion. 22 billion. So what did Zuckerberg know that we didn't? Simply put, the data told a different story. So let me ask you a series of rhetorical questions. Don't answer this. How many products, features, enhancements can you recall in recent history or before that have never delivered any value or even been shipped? How many have you been a part of? And the reason for that stress that I mentioned is that our customers lie to us. Or through the lens of value, our customers are wrong about value. But we know this, don't we? And this has been known for a long time. Henry Ford probably said this. I don't think we can attribute this back to Henry Ford, but we know this, don't we? If I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. But interestingly, Harvard Business Review did a major study on this about a decade ago and summed it all up. Don't go read the paper. I've lifted a quote for you here. An innovator should have an understanding of one's customers and their problems via empirical, observational, anecdotal methods, or even intuition. They should also feel free to ignore customer inputs. So let me loop back around then. Remember our three categories? So what is anti-fragile or anti-fragility in product management? Well, if you're fragile, it could look like that you deliver in large batches, which could lead to large losses and a major loss of stakeholder or customer value as a result. Robust could be that you're able to maintain that stakeholder or customer value even when you're wrong. And I'm guessing most of us can't do this unless we work for big corporates with very deep pockets. But I think all of us can agree we want to be anti-fragile. And in this instance, it means that you're able to improve your value in some way when you find out that you're wrong. So finding out that you're wrong means that you're actually able to improve as a result. So how do you become anti-fragile? It means changing your mindset. And I'm going to suggest that every product, project, initiative, feature, story, insert your favorite work item type, is an investment with an undeterminable rate of return. We don't know what the value is up front. Let me put it another way. Every product, project, feature, story, insert your favorite work item type, is a bet which may or may not pay off. Or in other words, if you spend any time up front trying to quantify your value, it's almost certainly going to be wasted activity. The only real determinant of value is feedback on delivered items, products or services or features that customers have in their hands that you're able to get some type of observable data on. So just one implication then is that we are doing or have been doing feedback all wrong because our customers lie to us. So we need to rethink then when we get customer feedback from. Now, if you're in an online business, Facebook, I'm sure, have very sophisticated tools. It's not primarily through survey data or NPS data or Trustpilot scores. Those things are useful in their context. They'll give you sentiment, but they won't give you the data points that you need to make the right decisions up front. What you need is observational data around customer behavior. So that could be page views, it could be time taken to complete a specific task, it could be failure rate, dropout rate, conversion rate, or it could be percentage of target customers that use that feature. But it's observational data that you can use to help you make decisions. So I think at this point then, there are probably three big implications. Every product, feature, or request that you get from your stakeholder has to be treated as an experiment which needs to be proven or disproven using observable customer data. Your product, feature, stakeholder request, whatever it is not done on delivery. It can't be done on delivery. It's only done when you have the data to tell you whether to keep it or discard it. Now again, another rhetorical question. How many of us have binned products or features? And how many of us have binned products or features that we have sunk a ton of time and money into and bin them pretty quickly after releasing them because we know they're not doing what they were supposed to do? That's rhetorical. Don't answer that. Thirdly is create your products in a way that helps you observe customer behavior and preferences. Bake it into how you build your products. So let me go back to your cards, if that's okay. Imagine you're that product manager and your prototype test results are in. Remember, the report's clear. Customers are being very, very clear with what they like and don't like. Based on some of the things I've just said, looking at your card, how do you feel now? This is real data. Does anybody know where this comes from? Not NPS scores, but it came from a product launch in 1985 called New Coke. So you may or may not know the case story, but Coke had been losing market share in the US for quite a long time. Pepsi had launched something called the Pepsi Challenge, which interestingly was masterminded by a guy called John Sculley, who went on to be CEO of Apple, who ended up ousting Steve Jobs. Another story. They had used this to gain traction and market share. So Coke decided to shake up its product and replace Coke with New Coke. And they tested extensively, very extensively, and the data told them to go and do it. And it lasted about 71 days, so about 71, 72 days before they rolled back. And at a press conference on the 11th of July 1985, the former president, who I think at the time was Koo of Coca-Cola, said this: basically, our customers lie to us, or they're not the right source to get that determinant of value up front. So what could an alternative strategy have been? A few things: small investments, quick production, limited rollout. But they could have done those things to observe sales and then determine expansion. Interestingly, what Coke did was launch across the whole of the US, with some US consumers going abroad to get the old Coke, because they hadn't quite reached international markets at that point. But if they'd gone locally to a target market, they could have observed sales and then determined their expansion strategy from there. So the implication then for Coke, or unlike for Coke at least, should be that we are wrong about value. And if we're trying to become anti-fragile, we do need to think about where we get sources of data for value. Therefore, if our return cannot be determined up front, our investment now is controllable. That is one thing that we can control. So therefore, then, when it comes to Agile and all our strategies and those sorts of things, I think it all boils down to this one statement. We are wrong. Quite how wrong we are, we don't know, but we need to find out how wrong we are as soon as possible. We have got some tools at our disposal to help us work out how wrong we are as soon as possible. They're called flow metrics. I'm not going to give you a masterclass in flow metrics now, don't worry. If you've never heard of flow metrics, don't worry. If you know about flow metrics, hopefully this is a bit of a refresher. But I'm going to introduce just two of them to you, which is cycle time and work item age. If you want to know more about flow metrics, my second book recommendation is a book called the Kanban Pocket Guide, and we've got one of the authors here in the audience with us. Chapter 6, I think, specifically talks about flow metrics. If you want more information, I would send you there. But there is one flow metric that will help us to get an indication of what investment we've made, and that is cycle time. And cycle time is the measure of investment that we have made in a delivered item. So let me tell you how to calculate cycle time if you're not aware. I'm hoping most of us in this room have seen something like this before. If you haven't, don't worry. It's a visualization or a representation of a workflow. Your little squares represent some unit of value. Don't worry about the color code. But basically, stuff starts life as an idea, maybe, or a concept. It goes through stages of a workflow. Something gets done to it before it gets handed over, and at some point it's done. And to have a workflow, you need two basic things. You need a few more, but two basic things. You need an agreed start point, so you need to understand when something starts life, and you need a finish point, so an agreed and understood point when something is finished. So when your square crosses that start line, or your start point, the stopwatch starts, it works its way through the system, crosses the finish point, stopwatch starts. That is cycle time. A little plug for Actionable Agile, because we've got somebody from 55 Degrees in the room. You don't need Actionable Agile to calculate cycle time, but it is a great tool to help you. There are lovely, lovely metrics and tools and graphs that you get out of it. Go to 55 Degrees website. Margot, who's in the audience here, will do a better job in either 30 seconds or 10 minutes in explaining a chart like this. But this is what's called a cycle time scatter plot. Just briefly, on the x-axis you have calendar day. On the y-axis you've got cycle time, which in this context is days. And when something crosses your finish point that I showed you a minute ago, you get a little timestamp or a little blue blob. And this just basically says, on this day here, this item finished, and it took about 8 days. You get all sorts of nice other things that you can get out of a chart like this, but you can start to make probabilistic forecasts. For example, one of those squares I just mentioned, for that team, with 85% probability, tracing it back, 16 days or less to do an item. So if you want to ask a question, how long will it take for this team to do one of those little squares I mentioned? For this team here, with 85% probability, it's 16 days or less. Now, you may know that or you may not, but why am I telling you that? Because cycle time can help you in lots of ways. Cycle time is a measure of that investment, as I mentioned, and what we're trying to do is reduce the time from idea or somebody working on something all the way to a customer getting something in their hands. That is cycle time, and you're trying to shorten that window as much as possible. And remember, feedback could come from a customer, a stakeholder, or the system itself. Another way to think about it is that we want to get some feedback, even a small amount of data, with as little investment as possible. And to do that, we need to think in bets. And this is the third and I think final book recommendation I'm going to give in this talk. There's a brilliant book by Annie Duke called Thinking in Bets. It's not a book about poker, but she recalls some of her experiences as a poker player. And the premise of this book is, how do we make decisions when we have incomplete or even wrong data? We could think about it in poker terms. So just imagine another nice graph. You've got bet size, time. We heard yesterday a brilliant talk from Powell, if you were there. MVP, minimum viable product. How many times do we do minimum? He seemed to think next to never. I would agree with him. And that's a massive bet size. So all your time, you burn all your time, and you deliver everything to your customer in one go. Annie Duke would say, do things in smaller batches or make smaller bets and spread them out further. Start to release something to your customers so you're able to get that observational data that I mentioned, and you're getting some data then on what to do next. Because she says thinking in bets will improve decision making throughout our lives. And this is the premise of the book. Don't worry too much about the quote. But as we're getting that data in, and we're playing those hands with smaller bets, we're able to determine what to do next. Or to think about it in anti-fragility terms, being wrong makes us better. And if we are wrong, blue here means we've delivered something to our customer, they like it. Red means they don't like it, it hasn't landed well. If you land everything in one big bet right at the end, you're rolling the dice. And in this case, your bet hasn't paid off. If we think about it in smaller bets instead, likely a number of our bets still won't pay off, but at least we're getting data at each of these points here to say what is not paying off. And as we probably know, data about what doesn't work in some ways, particularly when you come to do product discovery, is more useful than, or as useful, certainly, as things that do work. You're getting data points much earlier on, and that's able then to give you the insight that you need to make the right decisions next. But there is one big problem with cycle time. It can only tell us about past investments. So you're only getting the data after you've made that investment. We need to go much earlier on in this flow. And as I've said already, we can't go here. So if our start point was here, we can't go here because we can't determine value up front. So we need to go here. And we have got a second flow metric that helps us with this. And it's probably the least used flow metric, and it's called work item age. Work item age is the precursor to cycle time, and it's basically the amount of elapsed time from something starting to the current time. So if you think about your workflow like this, you've got your start point, you've got your finish point as mentioned. These are all your active items. Each of these will have a work item age metric attached to it. Actionable Agile also gives you a nice little chart. Always get this one wrong. It's called the aging work in progress chart. Did I get it right? Excellent. I always call it something else. But basically, this is telling you where in your system your items are up to and how old they are. Why is this useful? Because if we want to reduce product risk, controlling work item age and work in progress, which is a third metric, I won't go into that now, these ones as a measure of active investments will help you make decisions on things to do now to help you protect your investment. Remember, you're already working on stuff. So stuff is sitting around and aging. You're putting more investment, more time, more money into them. That chart will help you to determine where to go next. We can control age in two key ways. You can limit the number of items you work on simultaneously by limiting WIP. And you can make your products, features, requests, whatever they are, the smallest they can be, by working in small batches or making a series of small bets, as I mentioned. So you can take that principle from Annie Duke and apply it to your context using these tools. So the key thing I want to land is, as items age, two key things will happen, almost certainly. Your investment increases, and your return still remains unknown because you're parking it all up into that big batch. And the probability of your investment increasing will continue, and the risk is that it continues and exceeds that return ultimately. How many projects have we worked on where we write the business case, it's 6 months, we've said how much it will cost, a year later still no product or feature. At that point we've sunk so much money into it, it probably will never get us the return we want, and so we continue anyway. Getting your smaller batches out will mean you get something to your customers and you're able to get some data back. Think about it in these terms here. You've got your return on investment, and ultimately that's what we're going for, that's what we're trying to protect. And as I've said already, value is undeterminable. We cannot determine value truly up front. We can try, and we all try. We've all written these business cases, I'm sure. But the one thing we can try to control is time. And the way we do that is by using this metric here, work item age. Control work item age, you can get shorter feedback cycles, and hopefully you're getting some return then on your investment much sooner. So let me try and draw it all together then, just in the last minute or two. How do we become anti-fragile in product management? I would say try to remember what makes us agile. We're absolutely wrong about value, even the big companies that we respect. But we need to find out how wrong we are as quickly as possible. So our best bet to do that is limit the amount of investment that we make up front. And you can do that in 3 key ways, as I've said. Limit your work in progress and react quickly to aging items. So don't let your investments sit around unrealized. Work in small batches. Deliver things in those small bets. Get that data, that observational data in, and course correct. And get that customer feedback then and work on it. But it needs to be observable customer behavior. I think if you were to boil Agile down to these principles, I think this is it, isn't it? Just one more. Don't sabotage your ability to do these 3 things. Don't flood your systems with lots of work. Don't let it sit around aging. Don't store everything up into big batches. As I said, I agree with Powell's comment yesterday. And try to build your product so you can get that observational data in. Do that, I think you could be anti-fragile with product management. I think I've got about 90 seconds left. 4 minutes. Look at that. Don't let your talk age. Thank you very much.